Our next question asks, we hear about overcrowding of prisons, yet we don't necessarily feel any safer. What are your thoughts about preventing people from entering the criminal justice system and your courtrooms to begin with? And again, this is really a philosophical question for you. And we'll begin with Mr. Pitzker.
Oh, yes. I mentioned that before in my opening statement. To help the system out, we need to rehabilitate the drug addicts, to get them off their drugs and to be productive members of society, and that alone would be a huge, huge help. It reduces the crime, it reduces the cost to the taxpayer. The other approach or other aspect that can help out a lot is you need more intervention at the juvenile level. So many kids, by the time they're 16, are hardened criminals. You need to work with the kids to get them motivated into the right frame of mind to be productive citizens, to work for a school or whatever, but just simply to get them away from the gang mentality and all that sort of thing that's so prevalent in the teenager's life today. Thank you.
Ms. McCracken.
I think that crime prevention is a really important issue, and it's something that's important for a judge to consider and take an active role in that. I think that some of the things have already been raised that are important for that. Rehabilitation of drug offenders, and as I mentioned, part of my personal volunteer work has been in that area because I see how drug addiction can lead to theft, can lead to burglaries, which are considered violent offenses, and so forth, robberies, those kinds of crimes. So try to nip it in the bud by being involved in that kind of work. It's also very important to do work with juveniles because it's true, it's scary to see it from this perspective, but by age 15 and 16 you can see teenagers who are firmly entrenched in gang lifestyles, and that leads to future criminality. But it's also important to work with families because you have many families who have difficulties with raising their children so that they're not involved in gang lifestyles and then they don't go down that path. And I think that some of the work that I've done in the area of truancy and working with families has shown a commitment to that. But a judge needs to bring all of those perspectives in because the answer is not necessarily in every case, lock them up and let's throw away the key. Judges who understand and are familiar with these issues can do things much earlier in the process to keep us all safer in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spielbauer.
I'm going to have to kind of give a disclaimer. These are my personal views and in no way reflect on how I would deal with things as a judge. The first question you have to ask in regards to crime and prison overcrowding, that kind of thing, is what makes it a crime? Why is something a crime and something not a crime? Because it's been declared to be such. And I think that if we take a look, reflect on what our laws are and what we have decided will be crimes and what should not be crimes, and what should send people to state prison will have a dramatic impact on prison overcrowding. I'm very much a believer in the fact that, you know, people, hardened criminals, those who perpetrate violence on other people, those who cause catastrophic financial loss, such as ripping off people who invest and they get ripped off, things of that nature. Yes, they're the ones that are deserving of incarceration. But when you start to look at some of the softer, if you want to call it softer crimes, such as, say, drug possession, marijuana possession, things of that nature, I think we need to reflect on whether do we really want to continue making that criminal, or do we want to take another approach, which in turn would definitely alleviate prison overcrowding.
Thank you. Ms. Zecker?
I think until we deal with the reasons why there has been such a breakdown in the family dynamic, we as a society are not going to feel safer. And that is just, I believe, from the work that I do in our family court system with the collateral connection to the criminal justice system. We are seeing a breakdown of the family in a way that is not good. We are seeing parents who are allowing children to parent themselves. We are seeing generations of children raised with a lack of accountability and an entitlement mentality. And when we have a lack of accountability, that leads to folks believing that the law is not something which needs to be followed, but which is something that can be gotten around because somehow I'm special. We see children who are raising themselves and then become involved in gangs, become involved in crime. We see children who are raising themselves develop drug problems as early as 10 or 11 years of age. That's my world. So as a society, until we figure out why the family is breaking down and how we can support the family in addressing the needs of children, I'm not sure we're going to feel safer as a society, and I believe the prison overcrowding is going to continue.
Thank you. Ms. Alloggiamento.
I actually agree with what was just said and what we're seeing, because that's exactly what I was seeing in the juvenile justice system and in our community throughout Santa Clara County. If you start with prison and work your way backward, unfortunately, the majority of people who are in prison started out as juvenile offenders. Majority of juvenile offenders started out as truants. And in fact, there's a statistic that 80% of people who are in California State Prison were truants, which means we have to be starting with the youth. Not only in getting them back to school, but really with giving their family support. And that is why we started a parent project, the program I talked about earlier. And I can tell you that of the 600 families that have graduated out of that program, we have actually seen phenomenal results. And I personally go to quite a few of the graduations, as many as I can attend. And parents who have put their kids through other programs, other services, and gotten the results are finding results as soon as they learn how to do it. They have their children, one parent told me how their child was finally drug-free for 45 days after graduating from this program, despite that no other program had had any effect on him. I've talked to parents whose child finally got out of gangs. And what that is teaching parents that they have to be the ones who are accountable for their children. They have to have some accountability, but also they have to have the tools and the love and the support of their children. And what we have found is if we work with the families and the parents, that the parents will, in fact, make those changes of their children. Is that time?
Thank you. Mr. Cimors?
Well, I think the real question here is, what about the role of a judge with respect to this question? I agree with almost everything everyone said, but the real question is, what should the judge do? So I look at our courts right now. We have a drug court here. You may not all know that, but that is a court that's oriented on dealing with drug offenders and primarily or often sending them into diversion and rehabilitation. I know because I've talked to some of the judges that sit there that this changes people's lives, and I'm very encouraged by that. But more than that, I think that the role of a judge in our county and our society is the role of a leader. It's someone who influences others by the position they hold, the things they say, the positions they take, and the structures that they help the community set up to deal with serious problems. And so I think that that's something judges need to do. What exactly I would do, I'm not in a position to say right now, except that I think that the role of a judge is a leadership position and to help the community deal with these procedures, even though it's not in other words, the court isn't going to decide anything. You're not going to be deciding things as a judge on these community measures that need to be taken and done, but you can influence other people to do it because you hold an influential position in the society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.